Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're looking at something I am absolutely fascinated by, the Peacock's Protocol, the psychology of security adaptability. Okay, let's dive into this.
So, what is the most important tool in a guard room? I want you to put yourself in a security guard's shoes for just a second. Imagine you're on, say, hour 6 of a totally mundane 12-hour shift, right? The building's quiet, the perimeter is completely secure, you know this environment like the back of your hand. You're just sitting there in the guard room, staring at the exact same screens you've monitored 1,000 times before. And you gotta ask yourself, if something suddenly goes sideways, what's my greatest asset here? Is it that super high-tech multi-zone alarm panel sitting right there on the desk? Or maybe the heavy-duty fire extinguisher mounted over by the door? Or is it something else entirely?
Well, if you guessed the alarm panel, you'd actually be wrong, because your absolute best tool in this scenario is a highly flexible mind, especially when you are suddenly and completely inexplicably faced with this. Yeah, you are seeing that correctly. A live, full-grown, strutting peacock has just casually strolled right into the facility. We've got a perimeter breach, and the suspect is, well, heavily feathered. I mean, this isn't a drill, and it is definitely not in any manual you've ever read, for sure. This exact moment perfectly captures what happens when a rigidly controlled security environment is suddenly invaded by total, unscripted chaos.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer, frankly kind of comical, visual contrast here. Let's look at this scene analysis of the guard room anomaly. You've got an open white perimeter door, a standard red ILDS Lucker fire extinguisher, a green first aid kit on the wall, a white plastic laundry basket, and one strutting adult peacock. On one hand, you have the ultimate symbols of predictable, standard emergency prep. The bright red Danish fire extinguisher, clearly labeled, the green first aid kit right there on the wall. Mundane stuff, right? These represent rigid order and strict protocol. And then, completely blowing up all that carefully constructed order, is a massive exotic bird just wandering across the floor. It is literally the visual definition of an anomaly, which makes its presence feel even more jarring against that standard backdrop.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why rigid thinking fails in the real world. Let's look at standard threats versus bizarre anomalies. See, standard threats are what we train for constantly. A fire breaks out, boom, your brain uses cognitive mapping to instantly link the smoke to that red extinguisher. Medical issue? Your brain maps it straight to the green box. But bizarre anomalies? They completely short-circuit that cognitive mapping. There is literally no standard protocol for a wild peacock invasion. When a guard hits an anomaly like this, it causes immense psychological friction. The training is screaming, find a recognizable threat pattern, but reality is just presenting a vibrant, squawking bird. If a guard's mind is too rigidly attached to a checklist of expected emergencies, that friction causes them to just freeze up, totally unable to process what their own eyes are seeing. So, this friction leads us straight into a really crucial abstract concept, the expectation gap and when SOPs fall short. Now, standard operating procedures, or SOPs, they are absolutely crucial for establishing a baseline of safety. We definitely need them, but they're inherently limited by human imagination. Whoever wrote that guardroom manual probably spent months agonizing over fires, floods, maybe intruders, but I guarantee you they never thought to include a chapter on ornamental birds. And this creates a massive void, an expectation gap between what the manual says should happen and what reality actually dumps in your lap. And the only thing that can bridge that gap, the only system capable of processing a peacock in a space strictly reserved for clipboards and monitors, is human psychology. Which brings us to a vital concept: security adaptability. The capacity to maintain an open, processing mindset and adjust responses rapidly when confronted with absurd, untrained scenarios without freezing. Think about your own protocols for a second, at work or just in daily life. What happens when things fall way outside the lines? For a security guard on duty, true readiness isn't just about the physical ability to escalate force or fight off bad guys. It is heavily reliant on the brain's ability to stay open, process the absolute bizarre, accept that the impossible is happening right in front of them, and then pivot their response instantly, without waiting around for a manual to tell them what to do. Let's move to and see how this builds into an actual action plan for the unexpected. Processing an anomaly. Step 1. Observe without assumption. Step 2. Assess actual threat level, like, is the bird hostile? Step 3. Adapt the response. Step 1 is so hard because your brain's immediate gut reaction is, nope, this cannot be happening. But you have to push past that denial, accept the reality of the peacock. Then step 2, assess the actual threat. Is the bird hostile, aggressive, or is it just kind of lost and looking for a snack? You have to evaluate the anomaly on its own terms. And finally, step 3, adapt the response. Look, you obviously don't use the fire extinguisher on it. You definitely don't tackle a bird. You might just, I don't know, calmly prop open another door and gently guide it back outside. You adapt your actions to the specific, observed reality in front of you, rather than trying to force it into a pre-existing box.
So we're left with this final thought. SOPs can prepare you for a fire, but what will prepare you for the peacock? Ultimately, this single kind of funny image of a bird in a doorway teaches us a profound lesson about mental flexibility. We spend so much time and energy building these rigid systems to keep us safe, but life just has a really funny way of throwing things at us that do not fit the script. SOPs can absolutely prepare you for a fire, for sure, but the peacock, that requires your adaptability, your sense of humor, and your open mind. So next time you face a bizarre anomaly in your own work or life, remember this guard room. Take a breath, keep an open mind, and whatever you do, don't freeze, just adapt. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep your eyes open for the unexpected.